it's been a long road in my life. And if we're talking about psilocybin, that's certainly a medicine that I have experienced as deeply sacred, deeply healing, uh, with an enormous dimension of wisdom. I mean, no wonder native peoples call these plants plant teachers. I think that's very correct. And they don't teach in our Western academic sense, they teach the wisdom of life. And, many years ago, I've come to a point where, under the impression of various plant medicines, psilocybin mushrooms being one of them, I thought, we don't really, as humans, understand our place in this creation unless we access these expanded states of consciousness, which are our innate potential. Now, the method that we use to access them is a secondary thing, but it stands without a discussion that probably plant medicines are the quickest and deepest and most effective form. The Western kind of scientific understanding, the best we can do with that tool is to talk about neurotransmitters, where psilocybin, for example, or psilocin rather, docks in the brain, the 5-HT2A receptors, thereby changing perception of ourselves, of reality, and so forth. I mean, that's already enough to explain some of the phenomena. But once we get into words like the spirit of the medicines, the wisdom, the teachings, we really have to look at the millennia old wisdom of the native peoples. And only then are we able to really more intuit than rationally understand what these medicines really do, and that they do have a spirit. So, in a sense, our Western rational understanding is the wrong tool to some degree. It's almost as if we would try to eat soup with a fork. Yeah, you can't blame the fork. Yeah, we have to blame ourselves because we're not using the right tool. And so, native traditions and indigenous peoples have kept this wisdom sacred for millennia. And for them, it's really clear these medicines have a spirit that connects with us humans in a very individual way and has very individual, in a sense, custom tailored messages or teachings that they want to impart to us. And if we take the mushrooms, I mean, an interesting phenomenon is the actual mushroom, as we all know, is underneath the forest floor. It's the mycelium, and it's a pathway that looks much like the human brain, with the only exception that it's flat in the forest and it's round with us humans. But there's messenger molecules floating around. They are known to communicate with other plants. They are known, especially in the Pacific Northwest with the redwood forests, to sort out certain plants that are welcome and sort of, chase out others and so forth. And so, to think of that forest floor brain having a molecule that is almost identical to one of the main neurotransmitters, serotonin, in our brains, and to then, you know, communicate with that wisdom of the forest by way of ingesting those molecules, that is one of the huge mysteries of humanity. And that's certainly, there's certainly some wisdom to be had. That's about as close as we can get with our Western rational understanding to explain these phenomena. What we see with people is there's no judgment passed on any use of these things, whether it's recreational or therapeutic or spiritual. But what we have definitely seen over the years, or I can say decades now, is that the majority of people do realize that the deepest wisdom lies in the spiritual approach. So if people go to a concert and use a psychedelic, it's a whole lot of fun most of the time. And if they use psilocybin, it can really be quite an experience, LSD, MDMA, whatever the case may be. Some of them, they get very scared all of a sudden if they took too much of the mushroom or so. But for the majority of people, it's a fun experience. No judgment passed. That's been used like that for millennia also. However, if those folks ever then take a guided journey with the intention of exploring the inner dimensions, the majority of them come out and say, "Oh, okay, this is a totally different deal here." And so they frequently confirm what I've personally always felt, and many of my friends and colleagues feel, that the full potential of these medicines only gets revealed if they are utilized in a sacred container like a ritual format. So a lot of the music is not that we created, I myself in the solo projects, or the major portion of the music in collaboration with my dear friend Byron Metcalf, the famous percussionist, and then some with Steve Roach and Lauren Norell and other people. So quite a bit of it was created not only under the impression of my own journeying or our journeying, but in my case, under the direct influence of a medicine, which is a really interesting experiment to do. Mm, so some of the recording, for example, on this album, Huachuma's Wave, Huachuma being the native name of the San Pedro cactus, which contains mescaline, was done while I had ingested the cactus and was under the influence of the mescaline. A really interesting experience. And so this musical journey is deeply, deeply inspired and guided by the medicine experiences, and even sort of almost brought into my life by way of the plant medicine saying, "You go and do this." Yeah, and I'm more like, "Hey, I have to practice the instrument more. I'm not good enough on it." And the medicine spirit just laughing and saying, "Forget it. It's not about technology. It's about you bringing joy to it, and it'll come back to you." So, I mean, this it's a whole nother story. And so in terms of the music, there are people who are not that deeply receptive to it. It kind of plays while they journey and they don't mind, but it doesn't really touch them. And then there's many, many other people, certainly myself, sounds like you're one of them, where music is incredibly powerful in a journey. And so knowing that, we've tried to create music that would support particular medicines. So, for example, the more devotional Indian raga kind of music, meditative music that my solo albums bring, it's more for the MDMA journeys or for combinations of MDMA and mushrooms. The more tribal music that Byron and I created together is more for the plant journeys, ayahuasca, mescaline, mushrooms. And the whole intention basically is not to directly influence the journey, but to to create the music in a way where it supports certain experiential dimensions and spaces that are known to arise during these journeys. And so when we work with people or when we journey ourselves, we choose music that fits the current experience, the pattern, or rather content that I'm going through in my own journey, to enhance and support that, but not influence it in a certain direction. That, of course, is very idealistic because many times in my own journeying, I've experienced that the music would take me somewhere. But I always saw that as okay, it's collaborating with the plant spirit. Let me just follow where it wants to go. And it's always been a very ecstatic and powerful influence that I always want to have in my own journeying and in the journeys that we do with people, mainly on ayahuasca, on high dose ayahuasca sessions, yeah, where really the music dissolved and it was certainly there, it was audible, but it became colors, or it became a different universe that I was traveling through, or it became an animal that took me for a ride, or I became the animal that floated along with the music, and I wouldn't be able to identify this as music anymore, but it became a vehicle, a magic carpet of some sort. So especially with ayahuasca, but also with the mushrooms, it happened many times that I would I wouldn't it wouldn't be appropriate anymore to describe it as I'm listening to music or I'm hearing the music. I kind of lost sense of that, right? And it became, I mean, it's really difficult to explain that in words, but people do experience that very often. Yeah, I mean, preparing for a journey, it's really good to clarify our intentions. Why am I doing this? Yeah. And curiosity is one of the most beautiful aspects of being human. So that's definitely a valid intention. Yeah, just simply saying, "Oh, let me just be open to whatever this experience is going to be." That's just as valid as an intention as something very concrete. If you allow me, I would like to look at this phase in my childhood, or I would like to look at my communication in my relationship, whatever the case may be. And then what they will answer in some kind of way, maybe symbolically so that I'm in the journey and I'm realizing, no, this is not what I was asking for. This doesn't make any sense to me. But I make an effort to just trust. And then the next day, it all makes sense with good integration, right? So the preparation in terms of really being open, reminding ourselves that this has been done safely for millennia, that there's a lot of wisdom to be had, and then it's really about giving up my sense of what Alan Watts called the encapsulated ego, and being as open as I possibly can, and using meditation, using gentle breathing, um, all of those methods to then enter the journey, obviously with an empty stomach and a Zen beginner's mind, uh, whether it's the first journey or journey number 1017. It doesn't matter, right? And so, as a general uh, kind of coming full circle uh, thought, we can never forget that we can only partake of this because the native traditions have overcome what we have done to them, our forefathers and the foremothers, mainly forefathers, unfortunately. And so we are really well advised. And to my mind, as crazy as that sounds, the medicine spirits do listen to that. They do listen to us, whether we have thoughts, feelings, intuitions, and awareness around this. We're well advised to always respect that, to honor that, and to not let our minds get in the way. Yeah. And the mind at best is supposed to ride shotgun in this ride. Yeah. And spirit and the wisdom of the plants is in the driver's seat. And one of the sayings we have that we always share with people is to never step in front of the medicine. What that means is I may be as educated or as qualified or as experienced as I think in my head that I can be. Um, Stepping in front of the medicine would mean that I enter a journey and say, I know what this is, I know where it's going to go, because I can explain the molecule or I've had so and so many experiences. That is stepping in front of the medicine. Staying behind the medicine means that I start the journey with a beginner's mind, knowing that this can go anywhere. Stepping behind the medicine and letting the medicine take the lead means I am going to follow the teachings of the native peoples about dosage, about environment, set and setting, as it's called nowadays. Know the medicine, know the dose, know the source, know the setting, know the set, trust the people that you do a journey with, because that trust, intuitively, that's the number one important thing over any degrees that people have, over any amount of experience that they have, because us humans are like children in this. We come to these medicine spirits, and they are like parents teaching us about what it means to be human, and coming back to a natural alignment with this cosmos and this life on this planet.